Well, why don't we get started?
Yeah.
First of all, a very warm welcome to everyone. This is the 35th edition of SaaS Talks. Um, and thank you, Swapnil, thank you, Brij, for joining us today. Maybe just a quick context again, and we repeat this context every time. The intent of SaaS Talks is not to talk about the rags to riches story and the war stories behind it. That's not the intent. Usually, we pick one functional topic, and the idea is something concrete to learn out of that functional topic, which hopefully can help you on a Monday morning to change things that you want to change. That's the intent. Targeted at early to mid stage entrepreneurs for most part. Um, a lot of investors also end up attending because they of course have a span of their portfolio companies. The topic today is actually around pricing, and particularly pricing with the advent of AI. And we are going to sort of dive deeper into it, but we've always felt that pricing is often one of the most powerful and also one of the least understood levers of building a SaaS company. There are lots of choices that you deal with. Um, we don't know when to experiment, how to experiment, what's the basis for pricing. Lots of those questions usually pop up in founders' head. And the intent is for today's session will be to help unpack some of the variables behind this and how to make decisions for your company, knowing fully well that every company is different. So, but hopefully we'll see some patterns emerge from this discussion. Very fortunate to have both Swapnil and Brij today on the call, and I'll do a quick introduction for both. Actually, Shubham from Pixis is also going to join, but not there yet. Swapnil is an IT Delhi grad and has been building Observe.ai for the last 7 years. I remember that I missed the boat, Swapnil, when you were raising. I have strong recollection that by the time I reached out to you, you had a term sheet. But utilizing AI for the call center and done a fabulous job, of course, of building Observe.ai. Brij is building Spry Healthcare, which is a company that is helping physical therapy clinics in everything from practice management to revenue cycle management in that entire process. Previously was the CTO of Ola and came into Ola because he was a founder and his company got acquired by Ola. And prior to that, did his graduation from University of Missouri at Kansas. And Brij, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you.
I had a recent conversation with Brij, found it to be very inspiring. I was actually quite amazed with the stuff you're doing. So let's actually, we do have Shubham also, who is joining us. We'll wait for Shubham's picture to show up soon.
Hey,
Hi, Shubham, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you, Shubham.
Nice to see you.
Shubham, we just got started. There are lots of folks on the call. I'll just quickly introduce you. In fact, I just finished introducing Swapnil and Spry. So, folks, please meet Shubham as well. Shubham is a grad of Bich Pilani and started building Pixis, I think, about 6 years back, from what I recollect. And the overall charter is to use AI to be able to increase the return on advertising spend for brands. I've made the mistake in the past, back in 2019, when I remember that we engaged. But fabulous job of building Pixis, Shubham, and thank you for joining us today. So for the three panelists, I just wanted to tell you the format here is that I will initiate with a few questions to set the stage. And there are lots of folks, as I said, primarily entrepreneurs. Most of the conversation will be driven by their questions. And therefore, for all the folks attending, feel free to put your questions, but please put your questions only in the Q&A panel, not in the chat panel. Unfortunately, I am alone conducting today. My colleague could not join. So I'm not even going to be able to look at the chat panel. Please put it only on Q&A, number one. Number two, please put your commentary only or questions related to the pricing topic. If it's something else, we'll cover it in a different session, but not today. And if you feel like it, you can raise your hand. We'll actually bring you on here in prime time video so that you can ask the questions live if you choose to and if you're not shy. But while I have done a quick introduction to the companies that you're building, I will actually begin with an initial question, which I would like actually each of the three of you to answer in as short a time as possible, which is when you started, what was your pricing model and what has it evolved to? And we'll come to the reasons later in the discussion, but it'll be useful for people to know what it was and what it is today. And maybe we'll begin with you, Brij.
Yeah, so thanks, Alok, first of all, for having me. Excited to be here. I hope all of you can hear me, right? So when we started, this context of the business is that it's a rip and replace model, right? We are what we call SaaS 2 or second generation SaaS company, where we are replacing an incumbent with a better solution, incumbent fragmented. So in the early days, the strategy was similar to what you hear about HubSpot, right? The founders got together and decided this should be the price, this should be the price. We realized that for us to get going, we'll have to show value of replacing an incumbent, which is a very, very difficult proposition. No one likes change, right? So for us to do that, the first thing we did was looked at the competitive pricing, like what are competitors doing, and a few things that we observed, right? And the key insight for us was not to actually beat them on pricing. We were always going to be a premium product, so we increased it. But we decided not to nickel and dime them. So it was more of a pricing strategy discussion than the value discussion, right? How is it that we're going to price the discussion? What is the strategy? What is our... And second key, as an entrepreneur who's obviously done B2C and now doing B2B, my view on pricing has been that it should always be linked to outcome. Software has gotten to a place where it's no longer a tool, it's a way of life, it's a way of running the business, right? And it should be linked to outcome. So those are the two tenets of pricing that we kept in mind, that we'll not nickel and dime our customers. And the other is we will essentially link ourselves to outcome. So those are the two tenets that we decided, right? In fact, on the sales call, we actually say we use the example of Spirit Airlines, which is popular in the US, that you get a ticket for $100, but by the time you go in, they charge you for the seat belt, they charge you for water, they charge you for the oxygen mask, and eventually your ticket goes to $600, right? And that resonates well with that. So nickel and diming was a phenomena which existed in our industry with the incumbent. So we decided two things. Our incumbents charge anywhere from $50, $100 for per seat for the practice management product. We are much premium product, but we are bundling 10 different things. Some of them do part A, some of them do part B. We are doing part A, B, C, all of that. So let's keep it competitive. Let's make it $150, which is not the lowest end of the spectrum, nor is the highest end of the spectrum, right? The highest end. So we somewhere in between, which said that we are not the lowest cost product, but also said that we are not the most expensive either, right? So it's a good, because it helps with the initial inertia of moving to a new company. And the other is we make money basis the revenue that the clinics earn, because we are in charge of the revenue, right? And when you're accounted for someone's revenue, you have to be a partner with them. So we said we'll essentially take a percentage of the revenue that you take. Now, in that case, it was very clear, right? We saw what the industry norms are. Industry norm said 6 to 9% if the industry is operating mostly out of the US, if the operations is operating out of the US. We had an India advantage. We wanted a clinic which is making millions of dollars to trust us with the money, right? So we decided for us, the entry point would be to get to, we'll have to be lower than what they are. So we started with a 4% band. So 4% is what we started with. That 4% of the collections will come to us. So we divided our pricing into two parts, practice management and usage management. The other good part about this was you are not forcing clinics to definitely take our revenue cycle management, right? If they wanted to build trust over a period of time, they could get in with the $150, $250 and then over a period of time, hand it over to us. So these were the thought process. It was not very scientific. I think it was more strategic that this is what we want to do as a company. We want to do for our customers and decide our pricing accordingly and link it to the outcome. 80% of our revenue today comes from the usage-based fee, right? So I think those are the two things that went into our pricing decisions.
Got it. This is super helpful, Brij. I'm going to come to you, Swapnil, now. And would love to see how do you price, because your industry, I've sold a lot of call center software in my past. It used to be always on a per seat basis, but I would love to know, how did you start and where are you on your pricing model?
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple for us. We started, and where we are today is exactly the same point. We have not made a single change to our pricing ever, except, I mean, you can talk about packaging and pricing. Of course, as we have launched more products, there's evolution of packaging and pricing. But from a model perspective, our model was and is per seat model, right? And the reason for that is the market understood it, right? The customer understood it. The same buyer had bought and buys multiple other products which are priced like this, so they understand this model. So it was a very easy decision for us to stay that way, right? And we have stayed that way. That has worked really well for us. We have never had challenges, and there's no reason. And I don't expect us to change our pricing anytime soon. Pricing model to change anytime soon. Pricing, of course, keeps changing with more products, more packages.
Understood. And Shubham, the same question for you. Yours, at least I recollect, and our discussion goes back a long time, but I remember you were actually taking control of their advertising budget itself. But would love to know what was your pricing model and what has it evolved to?
Sure. So it was a usage-based SaaS right from the starting, where in terms of the consumption, how much you consume, you pay a percentage on that in terms of the usage, which is pretty common in sales and marketing world. And I would say that has evolved to a level where now we have three set of pricing. For Fortune 2000, it's more of a, I would say, a fixed pricing model, which is derived out of usage and discounted for like 1 year or 2 year. And if you pay upfront, you get a further more discount and stuff like that. For upper mid market, it's still a variable usage and consumption based. For lower mid market and I won't say SMBs, but likely slightly higher than SMBs, it's a fixed platform fee, which is monthly fixed platform fee, slab based, and you get certain features at a certain level of usage, because we now have the ability to predict that how much they can use. So earlier, when we started out, we didn't have the ability, we didn't have the data to predict how much the usage will be. But we started out as a usage-based SaaS and eventually moved out to building out to a fixed base too.
So, first of all, thank you, all three of you, for introducing what your pricing models are. They're actually, in many ways, remarkably different as well. One of the questions that actually many founders have asked in the past, and I have so much curiosity questions now for each of you, but I'm going to ask a more generic question, is that with AI coming into picture, and Swapnil, this might be actually even more relevant to you, one of the things which is happening is that gradually you can do certain things with lesser number of humans compared to what you were able to do. And therefore, the per user, the per seat based pricing models. And I don't know, Brij, if that's relevant to you as well, if yours is also on a per person within your clinics for the software part or not. But are those pricing models coming for a challenge, and therefore one needs to look for a different way to price, or not just yet?
Yeah, happy to answer for our perspective, right? So for the products that we sell today, right? If we don't, so if you look at contact center industry, right, we are not in the business of automating humans, right? So we don't automate humans just yet, right? We're in the business of today helping them, assisting them, augmenting them, right? So even though that number might shrink if, as AI does more of the job and there are less humans, right? Our market will shrink, but from a model perspective, right? There's no reason and rationale for us and the customer to think there should be a new pricing model, right? The argument is the market might shrink, the customer might end up paying less, right? But you can't change the model itself, right? So the solve that we have to do as a company is move towards building more automation solutions, right? Where we automate the interaction itself, where, for example, you become a chatbot and a voice bot company, where you are the one who is doing the work of agents. So you're now taking away agents, in which case you charge as a percentage of, you heard from both Brij and Shubham, a percentage of how much you're automating for them, right? So pricing model is a function of, is your product a vanilla SaaS product, or your product a hardcore automation product, right? And if you are a vanilla SaaS base, more likely or not, you're going to be a per seat model or some combination, some simpler version of that, right? So for example, if you're building a new AI CRM, you got to be per seat. Like, what do you mean new AI CRM? Like, that's still a CRM. The job to do is still a CRM, right? I'm building a new AI forecaster for a sales team. It's still the same, right? AI is, you don't charge for databases if you have or server, right? Same thing. You have AI. So that's how we think about it. Like, if AI is about hard automation, then you charge percentage of what you save the customer. If AI is about augmenting humans, then you charge for the humans that are using that. That's how we think about this, right? We can't, just because there's cannibalization or potential cannibalization, we can't go back and change our model. Like, there's no argument for that, right? So that's sort of like how we think about this problem.
Got it. Let me expand this question then to slightly more than just cannibalization.
Yeah.
Right? We have seen, at least broadly, we see three models today. One is on a per user based, or and for the lack of a better word, I just call that the classical SaaS pricing. It can be some other metric. There are usage based. The more you use me, the more I'm going to charge you. And the third is outcome based, right? Which is at least what I'm interpreting, let's say, Brij's model to be today. And I don't know whether, Shubham, that's true, whether I should classify you as a usage based or an outcome based. Any frameworks you can give to think about when to do usage based and when to do outcome based? And whoever wants to answer, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Alok, before I get into what is the answer, right, and your first question as well, I think of AI offerings into two parts, right? One is AI native or an AI first offering, which is a Copilot, right, or a GitHub, or other which creates Sora, for example, would be an AI native, because AI is the core of the offering. And in that case, I do agree what you're saying, right, that the per seat pricing will not be very relevant, right? It will still be outcome bling, because there will be a margin player, right? Someone, if you're charging per seat, there'll be a competitor who will do it at a usage-based level and outcome-based level. And the other is what we do. I don't call ourselves AI native. It's very sexy to call it, but it's not. We are an AI-enabled platform, right? A core offering is still workflow management, revenue cycle management, and AI is appending to that. AI is adding value to that, right? AI is making it more efficient. And that's for us. So I don't think the per seat model applies for us. I don't think per seat model is the right way to do it for us. Outcome is the right way to do it for us. And that's why we think of it in two ways. One is, and I think the second way is not very thought about it. One is when we use AI to augment our price, to increase the price, how much efficiency it is bringing to the table, right? For example, we do fax automation. US healthcare is littered with a lot of faxes, right? People have to read fax, classify it. You had humans in the office doing that, right? Now AI does that for you. So that's improving the efficiency of the human being. And then I think the pricing for that is an extension of how you do software automation. I think it's an extension of automation using AI. Second, which is not very often talked about, and which even we have not figured out, we're discussing, what Gen AI specifically is doing today. It's reducing the dependence on specialized labor, right? Especially in complex industries like healthcare. You don't need that kind of specialized labor or people with tribal knowledge for whom you have to pay a premium. So your cost of hiring goes down drastically. So it's not necessarily reducing the number of people that you need, but it's reducing the specialty. So you don't need to pay a premium. For example, in a clinic, right? You have 4,000 insurances, so many plans, there is someone at the front desk or an office manager who knows all of this innately, having years of experience, have learned through that. Now that knowledge can be democratized. Now you can very much hire a 2-3-year-old person out of school or with limited experience, and AI can simplify the knowledge, can extract that out of you. Now that is, I think, a big unlock for price. That is something people have not thought of. Even we, for example, have not figured out, right? How do I communicate to the clinic that you don't need this kind of a person to actually do that? And for AI-enabled services like us, it has to be outcome linked, because the number of seats will keep on reducing. If we increase the number of automation, I think it's going to be bad for my business if the industry goes towards seat-based pricing, because the number of seats is equal to number of virtual agents. And it's very easy for the customer to come back and argue that there's no human on the other side for you, right? It's all software. So why are you charging me such a premium? So it's important for us to start the trend for outcome-based models, right? Because you are paying 6 to 9% for the outcome. You start paying us 5%. Now, you should not bother whether I'm having someone in India, someone in Philippines, someone in US, or an AI agent doing that job for you. And if that narrative changes to seat-based, then obviously we'll have a margin pressure, right? Because people will say that. So I would want, and I would try my best to actually keep it outcome-based and move towards that direction, especially in an AI agent first world for us.
Got it. Shubham would love your perspective on this as well.
Sure. So adding to what Swapnil said, there are two pieces to the overall solutions. One is just like, I would say, a robotic process automation plus intelligence tools, and the other one is just intelligence tools. Just intelligence tools will go for, I would say, which is primarily a seat-based pricing. Robotic process automation plus intelligence will go for, I would say, a percentage of the overall piece of the usage, which people pay for. And if you typically look at it, it's going right now. And if you look at the industry benchmarks, and because we were working with a couple of large players like McKinsey and few folks out there, so what we realized that it's generally around 1/4 of the current price. So if you look at BPOs, UiPath's pricing is around 1/4 of what BPOs used to charge. If you look at us, our pricing is 1/4 of what the traditional industry used to charge. So if you look at even like, I don't want to comment about other industries because we have both the experts, but even if you look at call center industry, an AI agent versus a real agent, real agent goes for $20 an hour or $24 an hour, whereas an AI agent goes for 1/4 of the cost, which is $6 an hour. So the same for healthcare, where a healthcare nurse will go for, who will call and collect all the data, will go for $21 to $30 an hour. AI will go for $9 an hour. So it's a trend being established that you start out at $9, like 1/4 of the cost, when you have a solution which is robotic process automation, RPA, plus intelligence built out.
How do you separate between, I'm just going to, and Shubham, to sort of drive on the point in your case. If, let's say, you were to price basis the amount of program spend,
Yeah,
that to me will be usage based.
yeah,
But the impact that you're driving on the performance of that spend, if you were to charge basis that will become an outcome based pricing. Did you
yeah.
have to debate, did you have to debate between the two, whether you will be usage based versus outcome based, and why choose one or the other?
For sure. See, if your solution is driving an impact which is purely related to you, for example, you can do that when it comes to call center as an industry, where you make a call, not even call center, because call center also, it depends on the other person, because you call and if the other person doesn't want to buy, what will you do? So when the outcome is completely not driven by you, you shouldn't do it outcome based. It just doesn't make sense. But if it is completely in your control, for example, BPOs, they can do it outcome based. If you're automating a BPO, then you can do it auto based, or like outcome based, because you have to fill in data in a file. And you can do it in like 1 hour. With an AI, you can do it in 10 minutes. So you can charge, if I do it in 10 minutes, you pay me this much. If I do it in 20 minutes, you pay me this much. If I do it with this much accuracy, you can pay. But in our case, or even in the case of call centers, I would say it's very difficult to charge on the basis of outcome, because outcome is not 100% driven by what you do.
Yeah.
So when it's not 100% in your control, you shouldn't be charging it.
I
If I
think,
can add to that, right?
yeah,
Just
please,
a little bit, like
please go ahead.
I actually strongly agree with that. Right. I think even in call center, the companies who do automation, right? You would argue it's pretty obvious, right? Like, you take away 30% of my interactions, so give me the money that you were giving to humans, a percentage of that. Pretty obvious, right? The problem that happens is there's an argument that who drove the outcome?
Yeah.
Is it the vendor? Is it climate? Is it weather? Is it economy? Is it market? Is it competition? Like, what drove the outcome, right? And there's a lot of arguments on that. So I've actually not found many companies in the SaaS world, in software world, right, who actually charge based on outcome. Now, I'll tell you how people use outcome and how we use outcome, right? There was also a question, right? So you use the outcome to come to what you're going to charge the customer, and then you convert it to per seat or usage-based models, right? So if you believe that I'm going to drive a $10 million outcome for the customer, and you prove it through an ROI, you come back and say, okay, 3x ROI, I'm going to charge $3 million a year to the customer, right? they have 1,000 seats, so you do the math, or they're going to use 1,000,000 minutes or 1,000,000 hours or 1,000,000 whatever, and then you come back to say, you know what, my per dollar, per minute usage, per hour usage, or per whatever is going to be that. So that's how we have seen outcomes being used. We have not found anyone holding themselves fully accountable to outcomes and then saying like, you know what, only pay me when I deliver the outcome. And the other thing to that outcome model is it disrupts the traditional SaaS models. So SaaS business model doesn't understand outcome-based models. So you're not a SaaS business then. You become some other business, which people don't know how to model it yet, right? Usage-based and your seat-based, can be modeled as a traditional SaaS business and ARR and all of that. Outcome-based, it's out there. How much you will get paid when it's out there. So that's the other risk why CFOs are not ready to accept like outcome-based model. And final thing, and this is against usage-based models as well. Procurement teams and finance teams do not like surprises. Everyone wants, everyone, just like we write plans, right? We write our yearly plans and how much you will spend and how much margins and all of that. They're doing the same thing. So if they thought you will ask for $1 million at the end of the year and you say, no, it's $3 million, they're like, not going to happen. That's not how businesses work. They need more predictability. So some of the things around outcome-based pricing.
Yeah, please go ahead, Brij. I know you wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, I think very valid point by Shubham, right? I think it's very easy for an entrepreneur to get carried away by your customer's outcome, but it's not necessarily a customer's outcome that you control. It's your process outcome, right? And just in our case, right, if I was truly outcome-based, I would actually underwrite what the doctor is going to make from the insurance company. Right? I don't do that because I don't have any control over that. So the true outcome for the business is the amount of money they get from. So I'm underwriting the process, right? I'm underwriting the process of getting the money. I'm not writing the quantum of money, and the quantum of money is what matters to the eventual customer. So you have to be sure on what outcome as a business you are driving. So we are automating the process. Now, if we have debated many times, especially when in the early days when growth is slow and you want to growth unlock, why don't we underwrite that if a doctor is seeing a patient today and we'll get money from the insurance 30 days, why don't I underwrite and say that I'll give you money, and then whenever that money comes from insurance, you pay it to me. Now that's complex because there's so much. Now this is an underwriting business, right? But that's the eventual outcome for the doctor. I don't have visibility into the contract. I don't know what kind of patient is coming. I don't know what coverage the patient has. What is his demographic of patient that will come and see him, right? So very important to understand your business and what outcome you are driving and link to that rather than the customer's outcome, because the customer would eventually want that, but you have to understand what your offering is too.
Right. I'm going to take, I know that I have violated my rule by asking too many questions. I will begin to take some questions which have come around. And again, just to repeat, if any of you want to raise your hand and actually ask your questions live here, please do that. I'll pull you in. We'll take the first question from KP, which is that how do you price for different markets? And in case, let's say you are in India, you're in US, UK, are there differences in the pricing? And from history, I'll actually even add to that question. Can it create some warped incentives, which let's say companies in both in US and India, you have a lower price in India, they'll actually buy you from here as opposed to there. Do you see those kinds of things happening as well? Any of you, I mean, these are, whoever wants to pick it up, please go ahead.
We are a US only business. I'll get the other two answers.
Shubham, I know you did in India as well. So
I don't sell anywhere outside of US, so I'll skip the question.
So, yeah, we generate like $10 million from Australia and New Zealand too. So and India is small for us now, like pretty small, less than 10% of our overall revenue. But yeah, we started from here, and Europe. Yeah, we have been trying to scale over there. It's a tough geography for I think everyone. So but we do some revenue from there too. And LATAM is also a strong geography for us. So and US. So I'll give you a brief like one sentence outcome. Do not change the pricing for regions. That's like because if you change the pricing for regions, then it makes things complicated, because when you hire someone to run at the center level, automatic focus goes to the region which is more expensive if the parity of the pricing is too high. So do not change the pricing if you feel that the value driven by your solution is, and plus if the value driven by the solution is equal in every geography, then do not change the pricing. Because there might be that might reduce your TAM of sales, but don't change the pricing just for the sake of it until at least for enterprise and Fortune companies. For lower mid market, you can still have like 10 to 15% of buffer discount. You can have like in the pocket give discount to sales team members that if it doesn't close, you can go ahead. In APAC, you can have another 10%, another 15% of discount. In LATAM, you can have maybe say 20% of discount. But don't start itself that we have a different pricing for LATAM, a different pricing for that, because the moment you do that, your sales team will once reach out to, say, a global company which has headquarters in the US. They'll close it in LATAM first, and when it goes back to an expansion stage in US, you end up losing a lot of money on table back in the US. So I think that if you're selling into enterprise, that would be my advice. So yeah.
Point taken. Actually, I know that Swapnil and Brij, you sell only in the US. And Shubham, in your case, it's basically a usage-based. And therefore, if you have X amount of spend, whether you are in India, whether you are in UK, whether you are in Australia or US, it doesn't matter.
Even for lower mid market where we have a fixed pricing,
Right.
we do not change. So like the same
Understood.
goes, yeah, because the industry operates in the same way in everywhere. So yeah.
Understood. But let me just to push the argument a little bit.
Sure.
Because I know that several people who are attending the call will face this dilemma. And Swapnil, I'm going to take your example here. I understand that why you don't sell in India, but let's take a leap of faith for a minute. That you were to be, right? You are making a call center agent either more efficient or more effective, right? And therefore, again, for the lack of a better way to describe it, I'm going to make the assumption that if the cost of a call center agent is X,
Yeah,
you are able to increase productivity by 20%, and therefore you are adding 0.2x additional value to that. Now, because the cost X is different in different countries, the value that you are delivering is actually by design different in different countries.
correct.
Right? Now, in those situations, so let's assume that there are some people on the call here who do have a different value outcome for different geographies. Should they price differently?
Yeah, so I think let's establish what is same and then what is different. What is same is what the product does, what value they get. Let's use an example that I'll use actually a very specific. Swiggy is a customer in India. We have one customer in India. We also work with DoorDash in US, so we work with two of them, right? We actually also work with Grab in Singapore, but let's not. So, but two very similar use cases, right? DoorDash same thing, Swiggy doing the same thing, right? Both of them use our products to improve CSAT and customer experience. Both of them use our products to reduce their average handle time. Both of them use the products to reduce escalations, all sorts of things, right? Benefit is the same. Both of them will claim that I improved CSAT by 20%, right? Now, if you keep going further, okay, what does 20% CSAT mean? The US average order value is X, average customer value is Y. So 20% CSAT means $5 million. You bring it back to India and Swiggy is like, well, my order value is 200 rupees, which is $3. And my average customer value is bad and retention is bad because of Zomato and all that stuff. And so 20% CSAT improvement for me means $1 million. So that is what is different. So the argument here is the model remains the same. I think I'll say what Shubham said. Model is the same. Your price is different. And that's because I'm still charging per seat because that's how the world understands this industry, right? But because the value is different, I'll offer some discounts to make them feel like it's India pricing. That's all that is different, but everything else remains the same.
Understand. And
I'm not changing my products and I'm not changing my value. I'm not changing anything basically.
Understand. And KP, while I know I'm not the one supposed to be answering, but I've sold for 5 years in the US and I've sold for 5 years in India, the same product. If the value to your stakeholder, particularly if it's a per user pricing in different countries, will invariably be different. Otherwise, you will not be competitive. And you will realize that you will have to make some changes, and we can go into a lot of nuances. But I think without being different, it'll be nearly impossible to go to market. It does create the challenges that Shubham is talking about. We have had plenty of instances. And because I was at SAP, we had the largest global companies as our customers. There were instances when they will try to buy in India where, I mean, I'll take an example, take a Tata Motors and a Jaguar Land Rovers. Both were massive customers. They became one company. Jaguar Land Rovers then wanted to buy in India because the pricing was lower in India, right? And you do end up losing, to Shubham's point, in those situations. But in some ways, the good news is that you begin to encounter these problems much later in your growth when you're selling to those kinds of customers. At early stage, these are typically not issues, but you do. I do want to pick one part of the question, therefore, from Gaurav Pansari, which is one of the calls you make as a founder or a head of sales or product marketing, is that should you give a pricing and just stick to it, or do you discount? If you do discount, how do you think about when to discount, when not to discount? Who takes that decision? Can the individual salesperson take that decision? Does it need to come to the CFO? Who takes that call? So how does discounting work, and where does it become a lever for growth, and where does it become a lever for value destruction, if you will? And any of you, please feel free to take the question.
Yeah, I'll answer that from the early stage perspective, right? I think in the early stage, which we are still in the founder-led sales, founder-managed sales scope, it has to be taken by the founder, right? I personally believe. I think the sales guy can have some guardrails on the calls, but nothing beyond that. And I think it's a strategic discussion, right? So the strategic debate, right? The type of customer, is it helping you get into a new segment? For example, is it helping us expand to PTOT speech? Size of the business is very crucial, right? So for us, when we were moving from SMB to mid-market, we obviously discounted the pricing for the first couple of mid-market customers because that gives you the referenceability to go there. And the third and the most important lever for us, because will we have the big opportunity to upsell here, right? I think, and that's what. So the fundamentals of our business is that administrative burden is only going to increase, and the need for automation, the need for services will only increase, right? So do we see an opportunity for upselling? Now, I'll tell you two examples where we have discounted, we have not. Now, if the clinic is inherently a cash pay clinic, where they don't depend on insurance for their money, we don't discount the prices there, because I know that there is limited upsell opportunity. We won't be able to ever get to usage-based pricing there, right? Because there's limited margin on cash. So there we don't discount. But we know that a company relies 80% of their revenue come from insurance payout, but they're not willing to give us, they're wanting a discount in the early days, then yeah, we will actually discount, because we also know it's also a function of what roadmap are you building for them, right? Will the future products that you're building for them will be applicable to them or not? So it's a decision in the early days, which is a little more connecting the dots, right? With the future in mind, which a typical AE or an SDR will not be able to take on your behalf, right? So at least in our stage, where we early stages, the founder is involved. And I'll be happy if I have to do 10 such discussions in a day, right? It's typically 1 or 2 in a day. But yeah, it's with us right now.
Got it. Swapnil, Shubham, any additional thoughts that either of you wanted to add to discounting? And when would you advise people to just stick to a fixed pricing versus be open to discounting in the first place?
I think it's an interesting question. So I'll answer the late stage, and I'll go to early stage. At late stage, once you reach a point where you have a CFO, you have a CRO, you have a VP of sales. Basically, the way the world works is there's a list price, and every layer gets a discount threshold. So AE on their own can discount 10%, then their VP can discount to 20%. I'm making all this up, right? The CRO gets to discount until 30%, CFO 40%, and the CEO 50%, right? So that's how it works. So AE goes out there, says, okay, $1 million contract. Customer says, nope, 500. AE can only go up to 900,000, right? They then need to go to VP, and VP will say, okay, approved for 800,000. Then CRO approved for 700. CFO. So that's sort of like late stage stuff, right? Early stage, I almost feel like, I mean, let's assume early is like 1 or 2 million. I just don't even know why this is even a formal question. Like, sell it, whatever it will sell. Right? Like, it's not a formal process, like how much I can discount. It's a negotiation, right? Like, what are you getting in return? Are you getting a contract early? Are you getting a long-term contract? Are you getting annual payments? There's different things you would optimize for, right? So I almost feel like my approach is like, do whatever it takes to get the deal done. In early stage, you're lucky to have a deal. So, go discount, whatever it takes. Obviously keeping SaaS gross margins, you want to be in a good, healthy range. But beyond that, I mean, go for it. And then once you scale, once you get a CFO and a CRO, automatically they will put a structure and you don't have to worry about things.
Got it. I'm going to pick one question actually towards the end of the entire Q&A section, because I find many people struggling with this, and the question is from Richin Chose, which is that, is it recommended to do A/B testing and pricing? If yes, how to go about it? And what are the potential risks? And again, any of you, please feel free to answer. And if you can give an example while answering, I think that'll make it even more concrete for people as to how did you conduct that A/B testing and pricing.
So again, I'll go first and share from my perspective. I think no for us. We are a vertical focused platform, right? A vertical SaaS company. So we sell to a particular specialty, which is good and bad, right? Because it's a very, very close-knit community. You have groups on Facebook, Reddit. These are the same people who meet at conferences, right? And they discussed, and anything new, shiny is obviously which is discussed. Telling one customer, and when they discuss in the revelation that one guy is being charged different from another person, is not necessarily the right thing for us, is what we believe, right? I think people discuss. And again, the other problem is we sell to the SMB customer, right? And the pricing is very simple. So the problem, because we kept the pricing simple, it's very easy for someone to understand and discuss, right? It's not very complex based on usage. Your usage is my different. It's 4%. So in a closed-knit community where people are exchanging notes, SMB, which is price sensitive, and a simple pricing structure, I don't recommend doing that, right? Because the word will get out, it will get you bored. It will do more harm than good to you. Again, depends on the context, but in our context, no, I don't think recommend doing that.
I mean, but does that mean that you will not change pricing at all from the time you start? How do you
that's a good point, right?
the evolution of your pricing model then? And I don't know if you have done many changes to yours.
So that's where I think AI, the discussion comes in, right? I think it's a good part about selling to the SMB is also that features excite them, right? Features excite them. And as I said, we don't want to nickel and dime, but the way to think strategically is how bundling of features. So today, when we are evolving our pricing, we're moving from a first tier pricing. We have the base pricing, which we call the cloud offering, which every company, which was our premise is that you're stuck with companies from the 90s and the early 2000s, move away from that. So that's what we call the cloud offering, which everyone offers, everyone is doing it. But if you look at the technology paradigm, after cloud, there have been two more technology shifts, right? Mobile and now AI. So now we have a mobile suite, which is everything they do. We have a mobile companion app. And again, we are not doing SKU-based pricing, right? We are seeing the entire mobile suite around it. So that will get you $100 extra per seat. So that will include the kiosk, front office kiosk, that will include the mobile app for the therapist, etc. So it's a mobile suite. That's how you increase your pricing. And the third is the AI suite. You want to automate more. You want to reduce the dependence on high-skilled staff, right? So we want to increase our prices along with the offering, right? And again, the other problem that we run into SMBs is that one person will use one feature because that's one type of clinic, the other person will use the other feature. Now, I don't want to be selling individual. That's very difficult to manage. So I bundle all of that into one suite and sell it, right? So difference might be $30, $40, but it just makes it easy for me to manage it and also for me to make that upsell. Similarly, when we do the services part, right? So today we do only the revenue part of it. So that's 4%. If you start doing prior auth, that's 5%. So you have to keep on increasing your offering and don't lose out on the simplicity. Right? I've seen many SaaS companies, like the companies in India, they're a very simple product, life cycle management of contract, but they're 150 SKUs. Now, that's not going to be difficult. That's going to be very difficult to manage at a SMB scale. At an enterprise, you can do that. So you want to evolve your pricing, increase your offerings, increase the outcome, like increase the value that you're delivering, right? But bundle it so that it doesn't make it complex for you or for the other customer to understand. So that's how we do it right now.
Understand. Shubham, please go ahead. I think you are chiming.
Sure. So in terms of like, we still do experimentation in terms of pricing. So it's still going on. Early stage experimentations were very different. When we were below $10 million, it was like just founders. We used to change pricing and mainly it's like you change the slab because in SaaS it's like how much can you use in the slab, in like first slab, and then how much can you use in the second slab, and how much can you use in the third slab. And you keep changing that, and you keep seeing it. in our case, we can do it because it's enterprise. So unlike SMEs, you can experiment a lot over there, but the feedback loop is not that fast. Like you won't get to know what is right, wrong, because you might just get one feedback that this is too high from one person, and right next deal, the other person would say that this is fine. So it takes years to build on the data. It takes tons of, I would say, information to figure out what's the right pricing, and you can just change the slabs, and that also ties up. Like I still believe that, and in the modern world, there are very few companies which are changing pricing based on, like, who sell in US, who are a global company who sell in US and then sell it to other countries too. They can give you more, I would say, more value in the lower slab itself, but they don't prefer changing pricing for different regions. So we do the same thing, that you can use it more in the same slab for a particular region, but we experiment a lot. In terms of how to conduct those experiments, it's like, it has to be founder driven right from the starting itself, and then eventually goes to, if you hire a product lead, then the product lead works in with the VP of sales to bring together a structure of experimentation, because there has to be a method to the madness, because
Yep.
it is a madness until any point. Like a company's experiment, even like Salesforce still experiments a lot on pricing. So there is no limit to, and there is no, I would say, end point to experimentation of pricing. Early days, it's unorganized, like it's founder led. Eventually, it's VP of sales led, and eventually it's VP of sales plus product led. So yeah, that's how it keeps evolving. Who takes care of it? So yeah.
In the meantime, I'm going to ask the next question from the Q&A panel. And this is a question actually that I know has come from a lot of companies in the past, which is that AI enablement is expensive. In general, the cost of inference, training, etc., might be expensive. And as we add AI to our products, because we have increased costs, is there a way to therefore increase pricing, and how do you offset those costs, and how do you convince your customers to be able to pay now for the higher costs that you have?
So the first question is, has the value increased? So that's where you start, right? Because so in pricing, you're either doing a value-based pricing or a cost-based pricing. I'm assuming you're not doing cost-based pricing. Cost-based pricing is mostly done by outsourcing companies, right? Who are saying, okay, I'll give you an IT engineer. I'm gonna pay them $20,000. You pay me $22,000. It's a 10% margin business, right? So let's not go there. So let's assume you're doing a value-based pricing, right?
Yeah.
So the first question is, yeah, sure, you increase the cost, but doesn't matter to the customer if there's no increased value. So I'll start there, right? So now comes the point of, okay, the value has gone up, but how do I articulate it? There's multiple ways, right? I mean, one is you don't necessarily launch it as part of your core product and give it to every customer. You do it at renewals and say, hey, there's like 4 new things I'm adding. I want to increase my price by 5%. Renewals is a good time to do that. Second, you don't launch if the capabilities could be segregated a little bit, you'd launch them as add-ons, right? So I have a base product for $20, and then there's an add-on which is GenAI powered or whatever powered, right? Which is $6, right? So you can add that. That's another way. And then third is like, go back to the outcome, the ROI models you built for the customer at the beginning, which led to, so usually, in enterprise, right? So we primarily sell like enterprise. So, our deal size is like $500,000 plus, right? So it's all driven by a ROI model, which is like, okay, I'm going to give you $6 million, 3x of that, 1 by 3 of that, you pay us $2 million. That's how it usually works, right? So go back to the customer and says that 6 million is no longer 6 million because I launched these 4 more things. It's actually 10 million. Can we have a conversation? Usually, that's my take. Usually, middle of the contract is going to be hard. No one has budgets. Procurement is not gonna like it. Right. So either you have to do an upsell, which is add-on, or wait for the renewal and then ask for a higher price because you've added so many capabilities in the product. That's 2 ways you can think of increasing the price.
Perfect.
Cool. Just adding, like, You're very quick point over here. So, in our case, what we started doing right now, that and talking about LLMs, because LLMs consume tons of data to be trained, and that's why we're talking about the cost. So in our case, we have diffusion models, LLMs, video generation models, pretty much anything, all the three pieces which you can think of. And for enterprise, you have to pretty much retrain all these models. For them, because they don't want to, the whole proposition itself is that data, like if you use a diffusion model, you might be buying a lawsuit, not a solution, because who knows what data it's trained on. So what we say that so what we did on our end, like I'll just give you an example. If you use NVIDIA, and NVIDIA might like just kill me after this, but if you use NVIDIA, the cost is super high, like it's very high. But if you rewrite the same libraries back onto, say, AMD and Intel, it's like it's not a crazy investment. You can do it. Like it takes 6 months to rewrite those libraries. If you rewrite those libraries, the cost becomes significantly cheaper, and by significantly I mean 1/15th. So if and then we started charging our customers that we can give you an on-prem solution itself, where you can have like say latest Intel chips like Gaudi 2, Gaudi 3, and you can retrain the whole thing on premises, so that they pay for the chips, they get the control, they get the security, and they are in the cutting edge. At the same time, they're not buying lawsuits, because it's on premises, it's with them, it's in their control. So it's all about how you package and position it. And yeah, I never said the NVIDIA things.
Comment deleted so far. So one question actually some people have asked, and I think this is again a common challenge most entrepreneurs face, which is that in certain kinds of products, there is some implementation requirement. And in case of AI, sometimes even more so, you might need to connect to different data sources, etc. And therefore, there is a cost to it. And sometimes, and these are two separate parts, but I'm asking it together. Very often when people want to buy AI products in particular, they want to ensure whether what they're buying is actually going to deliver value. So there's a pilot phase that also comes into picture. As that happens, and please, I know it's hard for all of you guys to go into early stage mindset. Brij is sort of more there compared to the other two now. But if you are there, do you charge for these implementations? Do you charge for these pilots? Yes, no. What are the pros and cons? How do you decide these things?
I can go first. Early stage, right? So let's talk about early stage, not right now, right?
Yeah.
So I really want to clarify that. Once you become late stage, you charge for implementation, you have PS, you have GSIs, there's like a whole shebang of things, right?
Yeah.
Early stage, and I was reading some of the Q&A as well, right? Like, and this is again, just personally my philosophy. I'll do whatever it takes to get the customer, right?
Yeah.
If that means I need to implement on by going there, I'll do that. If that means, I need to take the cost, I'll do it. If like, I think that's the philosophy that's more important than, hey, I figured out like 10% of ARR in my first year when I have 5 customers. Doesn't matter, right? Like that is not what you're optimizing for, right? Like what you're really optimizing for is like, I can get enough customers so I can build a business and then figure out these things later, right? I often see people optimizing for things that that don't matter and shouldn't be optimizing for in the early days. And then there's like no future, right? Because you were focused on so many wrong things in the early days, right? So my take on implementation fee or pilot, we have done hundreds of free pilots. Now we don't do, right? Now we charge hundreds of thousands of dollars for pilots, right? But back in the day, I was grateful if a customer would say, okay, I'll give you a pilot, right? I will absolutely do it any day, and learn from them. So that's sort of like just my take. In the early days, if the customer is willing to give you implementation, take it. Not giving, don't take it. Do it on your own money. Pilot, keep giving pilot. Like whatever it takes to close a deal, do it, please.
I'll add on to that, right? I think my investors or board members come from enterprise sales background, right? Or enterprise company. So they find it very weird that we don't charge for pilots. We don't charge for pilots. Again, we're early stage. But I think understanding again the context of the business, that healthcare inherently is a high lock-in business, right? Once you get in the door, there is so much modes, there's so much data that it's very difficult for someone to come on, not impossible. the highest chance for us to lose a customer is in the early days when you're transitioning, because there are workflow changes. Some small things are there. I mean, so we are using pilots as a way to lock in customers for longer. So we don't have long lock-ins, right? It's a month-on-month, quarter-on-quarter package. But if you want us to customize for you, if you want us to adapt to your workflow or build integration, then the lock-in is 1 year, 2 years, right? And I know if someone sticks to my platform for 1 year, it's close to impossible, right? Unless we mess up in a big way. So you can use pricing is not just about making money today, right? It's also about making like SaaS revenue actually comes from renewals, upselling, etc. So the way for an early stage company to look at is how can you lock in the customer for long, especially in our case, right? Which is not a very high churn product. The value comes from usage, etc. So we use pilots as a way to lock in the customer for much longer, which also gives us leeway to, which also gives us wiggle room, right? Or margin for errors, etc. in the early days, which we did not have in when you're doing. So I think we think about it differently. It's not about the money that you make today, but what you can do in the future as well. And you can use pilots as a way to lock in customers for much longer. And we have not seen resistance to that yet.
Got it. Got it. I'll squeeze in one last question, which is, and I'm going back to the choice of model, which is seat-based or some other fixed basis, usage-based versus outcome-based. In the latter two, and I think one of you talked about the predictability that procurement teams want. I think you talked about that, Swapnil. But the flip side also, in fact, not flip side, but even on the provider side, which is you, your own predictability is also not there for the same reason. And so one is a predictability of your own cash flows. Number two is just the invoicing cycles. Usually when it's usage-based or outcome-based, then you are charging every month. You are running probably 12 invoicing cycles or 4 invoicing cycles a year, collection, etc. around those things. And the revenue is not truly ARR in that sense. There is, and it's not collected upfront for 12 months, which is again one of the beauties of SaaS, which is I collect money for the future right up front. And maybe this question goes for Brij and Shubham, but how do you handle the lack of predictability of your own revenues and also the multiple collection cycles and the lack of collecting upfront in your business? Are there ways to supplement those? Go ahead.
Sure. So, no, that very like I've been trying to solve this question since many years. So, there, and what I realized that there is one solution to it, which you start with it, and when you renew the contract next year, you know how much they'll charge in the first year. Then you discount the whole thing by 15-20%. And for the next year, charge them a fixed value. So that way, you charge a variable fee because you don't want to lose money on the table.
Right.
But when you know how much they're going to what's the value of the contract, then you can give a discount. They have already paid that amount for the first year. Then the next year, when you renew it, you can move to fixed. So that's one way to solve it. The second way is, if there could be a pre-hand predictability built, where in most of the cases, when you're selling into enterprise, this won't be a challenge, because like Fortune 2000, this won't be a challenge because budgeting is already done. So you already know that how much will come in. There might be like 4 invoices, 10 invoices, 20 invoices. That doesn't matter. Like raising invoice is not a big problem. But it's all about, if you know that for the whole 12 months, you'll have this much money coming in, XYZ money coming in, then you're all set. So for Fortune 2000, it can still work. The problem is always in the upper mid market, because SMEs generally don't go for variable. They like this, charge me a small amount and give me all of it, whereas the upper mid market is always the most crucial and the most problematic one. So I think solving that portion and building predictability in that is something which is still that's the most complicated piece. And in order to solve that, that's like after 1 year, go back to a fixed model to when you renew it. Yeah.
My apologies. I know we're already 2 minutes above. We always promise that we'll start on time, we will end on time. And I know, Brij, you also wanted to make a comment, but we will stick to therefore us ending right now. I had actually a long list of questions still, which I have not been able to ask, but this was super exciting. Thank you so much, Brij, Swapnil, and Shubham, for your thoughts. Really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for being there. And thank you everyone else for attending as well.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.